2 for our devotional. We're only going to be looking at 2 different verses there, but I think they paint a pretty good picture of what we're going to be talking about tonight. A lot of people have the mentality or the mindset when they think about Jesus. They think about this holy, pious, monk-type individual, bland of personality, and always going about in a uppermost state of holiness, careful not to do anything that might make him seem human. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that picture. I think Jesus was a person who enjoyed people. I think he enjoyed being around people. I think he liked to talk to people and to fellowship with people. And I think we see that tonight, like I said, in our passage of Scripture and in some of the others that we're going to talk about. In Mark chapter 2, verse 14, it says, "And he passed by, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the receipt of custom, and said unto him, Follow me. And he arose and followed him. And it came to pass that as Jesus sat at meat in his house, many publicans and sinners sat also together with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many, and they followed him." Here we have Jesus. Matthew is called to follow Jesus. He answers that call, and we're always amazed at his willingness and his obedience just to go forth and answer that call and leave that receipt of custom and to leave that life he had always lived. But here, as I was studying this week, I couldn't help but marvel at Jesus sitting with the sinners to eat and to fellowship. Sitting with the sinners to eat and to fellowship, to have a fellowship meal with them. Now, I believe he knew that was going to cause a stir among the religious elite, that they were going to go, wait a minute. Those people are sinners, and if you were a holy man, you wouldn't be eating with sinners. And yet Jesus here, he doesn't let that bother him. He doesn't let their opinion or their thoughts sway him. No, he's going to be found having a fellowship meal with these people whom others would shun. But Jesus seemed to always, and I couldn't help but think about this also, he seemed to always enjoy a good fellowship meal. He seemed to always enjoy a good time of food and fellowship. It must have been a Baptist, right? He enjoyed food and fellowship. Not just here, but I want you to think about some of the other times we saw Jesus enjoying food and fellowship with others around him. We know the night of his apprehension, he observed what? The Passover feast, food, fellowship with his disciples, that first church. After dismissal of Judas, he instituted the Lord's Supper. Now, that's a holy ordinance, but nonetheless it involved food, and there with his disciples, a fellowship, an intimate, close fellowship. I want you to think about not just the night he was apprehended and not just during his ministry. I want you to think about also after he conquered the grave. When Jesus met the disciples on the road to Emmaus, he walked with them and he talked with them and he enjoyed times of discussing of truth. But then when they got to their house, they invited him in, and what did they do? Once they went into the house, they had a time of food and fellowship. Remember, it was when he was breaking the bread that they realized who he was. Not just with the disciples of Emmaus. Remember, the disciples were in a room with the door shut for fear of the Jews. Jesus shows up amidst of their company, despite the door being shut, and it was there that he ate fish and honeycomb with the disciples. So there again, food and fellowship with those he loved. On the seashores of Galilee, Jesus called his disciples while they were out in a boat, and he said, "Come and dine, come and dine." And there on the shore when they came in was bread and fish for a time of food and fellowship. Again and again, we see Jesus emphasizing food and fellowship with those around him. But why would he do such a thing? Why would he emphasize times of food and fellowship? And why do we do it? Because let's face it, if we have a work day, we need to have some food there, right? If we're going to have a work day, we need some donuts or some snacks. If we're going to have a men's brotherhood, got to have food there. If we're going to have a ladies' auxiliary, need some snacks. Don't forget our monthly fellowship meal, right? We always want to have food as an integral part of a getting together and gathering together. Well, I think some of the reasons it's important are the same reasons it was important to Jesus. These times of breaking of bread create a sense of intimacy and closeness. All right? They create a sense of intimacy and closeness. You're there, and you're there together, and you're at a table together. And even though you may be at a different part on that table, you're still there at the same table in intimate closeness. Whereas maybe previously you didn't have that opportunity, right? You come to church with people, you see them in passing. They're going to a Sunday school over here. You're going to be in Sunday school here. And then when church is over, they're out the door. And you see them in passing, but you don't get that opportunity to have an intimate connection and closeness with them. When I first went to Tennessee years ago, I had seen Rachel at church. Right? I had seen her at church. I had seen her in the choir, but there was no intimate closeness there until what? Her dad invited me over for lunch one day. And then at lunch one day, there we are at the same table, and it created this sense of intimate closeness, and it gave the opportunity to start having conversation, right? That's what food and fellowship do. That's what it does, right? It creates that avenue for intimate closeness, but also for communication. So number one, it's important because it does create that opportunity for intimacy and closeness. But number two, since it does give that opportunity for communication, it gives the opportunity for relationships to be strengthened. It gives the opportunity for relationships to be strengthened. Jesus here, it gives him the opportunity to reach people otherwise would have been unreached, right? These are the people that the religious elite don't want nothing to do with, yet Jesus comes into this intimate situation, this close gathering. It gives him the opportunity to reach them, build relationships with them. And the same thing for us, right? When we have those fellowship meals, that gives each of you an opportunity to build a better relationship with somebody in the church. That's why it's important when we have those that you don't just sit with your family, right? You can do that at the house. Sit with somebody different. Well, I don't know them, Brother Raines. That's okay. It gives you the opportunity to talk and learn more about them. And thus doing, you build a relationship and you strengthen a relationship. So it gives the opportunity for that relationship to grow and grow and grow. I can't help but think about some of the best and sweetest times of relationship building I've had have been when I've had some meals and fellowship with some of the brethren here. Me, Jim, and Spence, we had many of those on our mission trip. And each one of them was pretty cool. It was an opportunity for us to just sit and fellowship and build relationship. Me and Mike, we had breakfast at Mount Enterprise on a mission building trip, and it was just a great time to sit and chat. Right? Me and Daryl White went to the hamburger stand at the gas station down the road, right? It was just times to get together and fellowship and build a relationship, learn about one another, and grow stronger together. So these times, yes, they create a sense of intimacy and closeness. Yes, they create the opportunity for conversation and a deeper relationship. But number three, with that deeper closeness and that deeper relationship, you have a deeper unity. Right? You have a deeper unity that is going to be present and available. I want you to think about that. When you're at the table eating together, well, you're at the same time and you're there at the same location, right? Unity. You're there for the same purpose, to enjoy a good meal. Unity. You're there and unified in action. You're both eating. You're unified in agreement. Let's both sit down and eat this together, right? There is a sense of unity there that as you're growing in relationship and in love, that unity can grow as well. And who doesn't want to be a part of a church that's unified and loving and close to each other? I mean, I do, right? I want to be a part of a church that enjoys being around each other and enjoys those times of fellowship because it helps the relationships to grow and it creates a sense of unity within the body. And also, who doesn't want to have good Christian friends, right? I do, right? In the world in which we live in with its downs and discouragements, I want good Christian friends. And the way you do that is by fostering food and fellowship and times in which you can have food and fellowship. So fellowship meals, we joke about it, we laugh about it, but ultimately Jesus enjoyed them as well, and I think we ought to as well. So, all right. That being said, let's have a prayer and we'll enter into